take it away.
Hi everyone. Like I said, or like Steph said, my name's Olivia Wolcott-Gonda, and I am located on Orcas. I'm new to the island. I moved here about 6 months ago from Iowa, so it was a big change for me. But just to start us off, if our participants wouldn't mind dropping into the chat if you are a producer of meat or vegetables, or if you're a new farmer with 10 or less years of experience, or if you're someone who's looking to buy local food, just drop that into the chat, and that would be great for our panelists to know, especially as they take questions. For the structure for today, you'll be individually introduced to all of the panelists. They'll tell you a little bit about their work, and then the last 30 minutes will be opened up for questions, and I have some prepared too if you find yourself with no questions. So our first person up today, is Sarah Pope, and Sarah is my coworker at the San Juan Islands Food Hub. And with that, I will let her take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Pope, and I'm on San Juan Island. I have a sheep farm called Oak Knoll with my partner, Adam Green, and I'm born and raised Islander and got involved in the food hub kind of by accident. Adam was helping producers with the tech side before COVID happened, and then COVID came along and we decided to launch this new market as a direct to customer kind of an enterprise to give local growers and also value-added food producers a new sales channel while we didn't have the farmers market and restaurants open. And it's been a big success as a retail market. And now we're looking for ways to expand into wholesale, which was the original intent. So lots of growing and shifting happening in our first 2 years, but we're really excited to be here and serving San Juan, Orcas, and Lopez customers and producers. So hopefully everyone here has at least heard of the Food Hub, but just to recap, it's basically like an online inter-island farmers market. Producers have total control in deciding what they list and how frequently they use the Food Hub. Some folks just use us in the kind of shoulder seasons because they're way too slammed in the summer with actual live visitors these days. Some people sell in the summertime only because they're just market growers and they take the winter off. It's been set up so that it's really about producer choice. Producers choose their own prices, and the Food Hub adds a small percentage on top of that in order to support its operations. So the weekly cycle looks like Friday through Sunday, ordering is open. So the market is live right now and anyone can come on and buy food. We encourage you to check it out. And then on Monday, the producers will get a pick list and they'll go out and they're going to harvest or prepare anything that's been ordered. And they'll deliver them to our aggregation sites on Orcas, Lopez, and San Juan. We'll box them up. We'll send them with Sasha's food connections for transport inter-island. And then Lopez customers will pick up on Tuesday, and Orcas and San Juan customers pick up on Wednesday. And then the producers reassess what they want to offer the following week. And we just cycle on and on. Olivia was kind enough to prepare a little slide showing our financials for the first couple of years of operations here. We were totally thrilled by the volume of activity that we saw in our first year. Even in our first 8 months, we didn't open until April in 2020. And it was so heartening to see the embrace of the new project by the community here. And we were able to start working in really interesting new kinds of public-private partnerships. There's been a lot of money available for food assistance programs that food hubs have started to be interacting with, trying to figure out how we can keep some of those dollars local. I've worked closely with Kristen Rezebek at San Juan County Health and Community Services. She coordinates nutrition programs there. And so we were able to use the Food Hub to supply the Farmers Market Nutrition Program in the summer of 2020. Kristen got special permission to do that. We were the only sort of online version of that program that was allowed in the state, and it allowed us to get a lot of really amazing locally grown produce out to islanders. And that's evolved in kind of, we're looking for new ways to keep that partnership going, but to keep streamlining, keep making it easier to use for the customers, keep making it easier from the admin side, because there's been so many wonderful community supportive programs, lots of money out there for these programs, but it's resulted in a pretty complicated system of there's coupons or there's market matches, and there's some things are good at some places at some times, but not at other times, or you can't use it for certain items. And we've been piloting this new island grown food access card, which is for people who qualify on income to use anywhere in San Juan County for any kind of local food, anything that's EBT eligible. So not just fruits and vegetables, but also proteins and prepared foods also. And the Food Hub has been one place that people can spend this money. Also farm stands, farmers markets, co-ops, anywhere that sells local food that can take a debit card, basically. And we're looking at this program for continuing in 2022 and seeking various funding sources to keep that rolling. But we think it's an exciting way to try to streamline the benefits that are out there for people and to make it really easy for them to use those benefits with total freedom of choice and flexibility on where and when they do their shopping. So that's another program we're excited about.
Thanks, Sarah. Can I show a little bit of the Food Hub, what it would look like
Yes,
to purchase?
please
Yeah.
do. Olivia is going to take us online for a minute to see what it looks like when you go to shop at sjifh.com. So this is our market, and like I said, ordering is live right now. We've got goods from 3 islands, and winter vegetables are starting to come in. We've got new Hannah new on the Food Hub. We're excited about that. Those kalettes are delicious. And Aurora Farms has been strong with winter greens, and that's been awesome. And a variety of meat producers, lots and lots of local meat available in the islands at a variety of price points, which is great. And so this is just like online shopping. You put it in your cart and you enter your credit card and you confirm your order, and then you pick it up on Tuesday or Wednesday. We also have, once we get past all this abundance of meat, we've got coho and setsunai noodles, and Poutine Your Mouth has recently joined us. We've got Girl Meets Dirt, lots of good meal options for people who want to take a break from cooking now and then. And also JBS Farm does a variety of hygiene products, custom soaps and all kinds of things. We've got flowers. You can buy a big woolly comforter for your bed. And then we also have that Good Food Certificate donation down at the bottom there, which is a contribution that goes into funding the Health and Community Services purchases. They get some government money for that program, but it just doesn't go that far. And so a lot of our wonderful customers like to kick in a few extra bucks with their order to help support those activities for the summer months. Thanks, Olivia.
All right, thanks so much, Sarah. You can see that I'm ready to do my shopping for pickup on orcas. So just give me a second, and I will share our presentation again. Alrighty. All right, our next panelist, keeping in the vein of local food hubs, we have Evan, and he is the project manager at Puget Sound Food Hub. I got to tour the facility yesterday, and I will turn it over to him now.
Thanks, Olivia. And thanks for everybody for, well, one, for inviting me, and two, for showing up to this lovely presentation. I've had the pleasure of working with Olivia and Steph and Sarah on some kind of regional food systems opportunities recently. And it's just a great pleasure working with our regional partners. We're just down the road. I can see you guys from my house, if that makes you feel good. So a little bit about kind of the Puget Sound Food Hub, and then me personally. The Puget Sound Food Hub is a farmer-owned food hub cooperative. So there's kind of like a legal structure there, and there's also kind of like, what is a food hub? So we already got a great introduction to kind of the San Juan Food Hub and kind of where they're at. The Puget Sound Food Hub has existed since 2016 in its current iteration. We've got about 50 member farms based out of a number of places, including a couple on the islands. We also have some vendors from around the region, including some folks here like Girl Meets Dirt. Basically the idea, reach wholesale markets, farmers in the area, join. We are for profit, but we are member owned. So all that profit goes back into the business, and eventually this year to our member farms. So yeah, just like some great structure to support small farms, provide quality produce to the communities, and really just kind of engage the local food system. I'm gonna blow this up a little bit. So 6 years in to existing as a food hub, we're kind of a different organization every 6 months, and it's a kind of a time of dramatic change. Some food hubs went down during the pandemic, non-diversified market channels, folks that were just providing to school districts or institutions. All of a sudden, everyone stayed home and it wiped out their whole market. We were fortunate. We had invested pretty heavily in a sales staff to focus on retail wholesale accounts like grocery stores. And so, basically a couple months into the pandemic, seeing the entire like restaurant and food service chain kind of go down, we went off towards retail, and we had flour, we had the right mix of goods in our selection that we were able to kind of survive that market pivot in time for large hunger relief funding to come out. And we were in a good strategic position spring into summertime where we actually had produce. So we worked with the USDA's Farmer to Family Food Box program. So they love acronyms. That was the FFFB program, working with a number of food banks in the area, both kind of distribution centers and then individual food banks. So produce went out to probably about 12 in destination food pantries or local hunger relief organizations, and served food insecure folks. During the pandemic, that program kind of fell away, but we were able to engage with WSDA's more recent hunger relief programs. And we'll be diving a little bit deeper into how to access hunger relief later in a little panel section with me and Sarah. So we'll cover that a little bit more. But yeah, when we think about investment, every food hub's kind of a different place. Every organization and farmer in different kind of stages of markets and opportunities. At the time, I would say investing in staff and generating sales was really important. And then investing in infrastructure to maintain them. So in the center picture here, you see one of our food hub trucks. That truck is now 10 years old. It could very well be a lot older. They might have rebuilt the engine at some point. So it's definitely like an aging piece of infrastructure. And that truck carries 10 pallets of produce twice a week up to Whatcom County, and services hunger relief, services local restaurants, and grocery stores. So just thinking about like the nitty gritty of the food system, something that people don't think about when they see a food hub. They think about, you know, the farms, and like the farm is the value add, like that direct traceability, that relationship you have as a buyer with the farmer, or as a farmer with buyers, and that logistical and marketing support that we provide is really important. The day-to-day is gritty and dirty, and we're in these old refrigerated box trucks, and we're in warehouses that are very clean, of course, and you know, we're just making sure that you know, food gets moving. So investing in just basic infrastructure. We expanded our cooler, we expanded our freezer. Jacob, who's on this call, already used up half of our cooler space, so that we provide a great resource to our farmers with that. And like that infrastructure is missing kind of throughout the food system. So we're really excited that as an organization, we're able to invest in something that benefited the local farm community. And it definitely helped our business too. We were able to double sales in a 1-year period. That was really due to like multiple market pivots, including just the vast amount of hunger relief funding, kind of strategic onboarding of producers at scale, and kind of years of relationship building, you know, with dedicated sales staff prior to that. So it was kind of a perfect storm of a lot of factors, but we were really happy that we were able to survive the pandemic and thrive. And you know, we're hoping to continue working with just the region, seeing how we can benefit. We work in a lot of different models right now. So maybe we'll pop that into the question section a little later, since I got to get through all these, and I think I'm already at 6 minutes out of my 7. So right now, problem-wise, we are trying to plan for next year. We're trying to plan for a post-COVID world, or at least a world that funding for COVID relief and hunger relief might be in lower stages. So like we grew, you know, exponentially during the pandemic, like many organizations that responded to hunger relief, just because of the funding. But it's like, well, now this is actually like an important part of our business. So how do we survive if that funding gets cut off? You know, how do we have production plans with our farms so that they don't overproduce? They always have a sales channel. So we're investing a lot in working with regional networks to engage with institutions. That was part of a larger food system summit that we just actually hosted with Mission West out of Montana, and a number of food hubs, including Salmon Island Food Hub yesterday. So we were talking about, you know, how do we engage in these wider markets that, you know, some of them dropped off during the pandemic, some of them we just never were in. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. It's like, how do we write a budget in uncertain times? And right now we're really thinking about diversifying. We're thinking about trying to get into processing, maybe just things that are important for the kind of current economy right now. So yeah, without further ado, I'll hand it back.
Great, thanks, Evan. Yeah, so we've heard from both of the food hubs that are represented here today. So we're just going to pivot next to some producers. So I'm going to introduce Tate, and Tate is a, you know, he sells his produce at the San Juan Island Food Hub, and he's also one of our board members. So without further ado, Tate, you can take over, and you can let me know when I need to change slides.
All right, can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Tate. I'm representing the producers. As we all know, it's my 4th year farming on San Juan Island. Got into it right after college. Just kind of how it all turned out. Saw an opportunity to take over a piece of land and started figuring out how to farm. In my 2nd year, the food hub would approach me and wanted to talk about what it would look like to get on there, and I was one of the first farms to jump on board, and it's been working out really well so far. You can go to the next slide, Olivia. So here are some of the wins from this past year. it's really nice to have like steady sales every week. So most of the same customers coming back and forth. You know, we see the same last names every week, getting similar items. And you know, there's like my sales from 2020 versus 2021, like very, very similar. And then another one was the good food programs that we've talked a bunch about. But from a producer standpoint, it really is nice to have like bigger bulk, you know, wholesale style orders come through, you know, once a month or once every other month. And it feels good to, you know, give back to the community while also making my money here. And the other thing is that it's really nice to have sales through the winter when farmers markets aren't running and restaurants are slower, and you know, people aren't visiting the farm stands, and having a winter sales outlet that doesn't require me to stand outside all year is really nice. You go next slide. All right. And here's a little bit about how I pivoted my business to manage the food hub and try and figure out the best way to, you know, make our sales and make sure that it's the best that we can make it. So it takes a little bit to figure out, you know, labels and packaging, and so that, you know, it's easy to transport and it's not going to ruin any of the other items in the bags. And then, you know, you have to just manage drop off times, you know, put it in your schedule, make sure you're getting into town at the right time. And then, you know, there's a little bit of LFM work. It's really, really straightforward. But, you know, you have to spend a little bit of time figuring out, you know, listing all of your stuff and making sure that there's pictures for everything. And these are all things that help your sales in the end. And then after all of that's done, it takes a little bit of time to figure out the market and where, you know, your products are going to fit in and what you can expect to sell. Oh, sorry, I saw a little chat thing, but LFM is the software that the Food Hub runs on. That's what we saw when Olivia pulled up her screen there. But yeah, knowing, you know, about how much is going to sell, not listing, you know, 200 bunches of carrots and expecting them all to go out, you know, that day is, you know, something I tried in the beginning, but didn't end up working out exactly the right. And so you have to figure those out, avoid the overproduction. And then, yeah, you want to figure out what's popular in your market and what's going to be the secondary items that you don't have to grow as much of. Like for me, it's, you know, salad greens and carrots and radishes, and, you know, cauliflower and broccoli are great. But if you're trying to make your money on herbs or leeks or, you know, green onions maybe, or something like that, you'll figure out pretty quickly that those items, you know, aren't where you should be putting your focus on, and you should spend a little bit more time on making sure that your salads are bagged well and clean and well labeled, and you've got a lot of them. Okay, we can go next slide. I don't know how many minutes I'm at yet, but here's just a few of the lessons that I've learned from my 2 years on the Food Hub. We have listing a variety of products really makes a huge difference. In the past and during the winters, I've had, you know, 1 or 2 items on the Food Hub, and it works well for 1 week, and then everybody fills up their fridge with carrots and salad, and then you might see less sales on the week after that. And it makes it more enticing for the consumers to be able to go on there and shop around and get some fun items, or, you know, not just be stuck with limited options. And that helps bring our buyers back each week. And then after that, we have to always keep in consideration of consistent production. You can't go on there and list, 100 carrots one week and then not have any the next week, because you're going to disappoint everybody that's going on there to get your carrots and make sure that it's all there, and they're going to be disappointed and maybe won't come back the next week. And finally, just the quality of your product really matters. And this is, seems obvious, and it is something we're always striving for. But, good packaging, cleanliness, and then always flavor matters. And then I would like to throw another point on here, that price point also does matter. We've seen, we're trying to get a more unanimous pricing structure that is proving to be a little bit more difficult, because everybody's growing differently and has different costs on the back end and stuff like that. But we're getting closer to that. And I think that's all I have. I'll be around for questions the whole time, or if you have any questions now, you can drop them in the chat and I'll get to them as soon as I can.
Great. Thanks so much, Tate. It was great to hear from somebody, an early adopter of the Food Hub. Next up, we have somebody who both has purchased food from the Food Hub and then who also sells their food. Laurie Paul is another board member for the San Juan Islands Food Hub, and she's also the owner of Market Chef. And from there, I will turn it over to her.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Laurie, and I've owned and operated the Market Chef with my business partner, Tim Barrett, for 20 years, San Juan Island, Friday Harbor. Our restaurant was created because we had a desire to share the incredible food that was grown and raised in the island community with a greater and more diverse audience than our work in our previous work in fine dining allowed. Fine dining was where we learned management and creative development and the skills required to learn to run a successful business. But the best thing that we learned and our greatest inspiration was forming relationships with so many talented farmers and producers in our community. And we realized then that if we wanted to truly commit to serving local food, that we would need to move beyond our concept of a fixed menu and embrace flexibility and seasonality completely, and be open to anything that we would have to adjust in order to promote that. So what we came to understand more and more is that we were in a working relationship with our farmer partners, and just like in any healthy relationship, we would have to embrace their challenges as well as our own in order to make that relationship work. And there were often unforeseeable challenges in the efforts of our farmers to provide us with the best product available, most consistent product available. And we would have to stay in a constant conversation with them. And we need to stay open and available in this constantly evolving conversation, and open to changing and shifting our work in order to adapt to these unpredictabilities. So that's what we created. That's kind of the soil, if you will, from which we grew the Market Chef. We wanted to build a restaurant that was rooted in seasonality, flexibility, and minimal waste. So we have a daily sandwich menu, which we can maintain pretty easily year round. And people can come and count on, finding their favorites. But the star of our show is really our daily deli case, which we fill every day with what comes into our kitchen from our farmers on any given day or week. So with this concept, we can easily adapt to whatever circumstances our growers are adapting to. And we can sell our dishes by the pound, so customers can buy only what they want to eat. So we see very little waste. We see almost zero waste coming back on plates after people have had their lunch or whatnot. And all of the food trimmings that we produce in our kitchen go to our friends' pigs, and they sometimes even find their way back into our kitchen door later. And we can adjust our pricing also as needed based on the ingredients that we're using in any given dish. So we actually can control making sure that we get the margins we need to actually make a profit, keep our business going. So it's a gratifying cycle. So what operating a business like this requires is a level of flexibility and creative spirit that many chefs are unfamiliar with through their training. Profit margins are very thin in restaurants, as we all know, and in an effort to control costs and sort of maximize your profits, menus are typically designed to depend on certain ingredients showing up day after day, week after week, season in, season out. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me because there's a lot of pricing variability and quality variability that comes with that, operating that sort of a model, yet it still is the predominant model of most restaurants in our country. So in order to commit to buying food locally, that sometimes demands that a restaurant has to shift their business model completely to make room for a whole different way of doing things. So anyway, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of my story about how we created the Market Chef. And the reason I tell it is because yes, we are a producer on the Food Hub, and we also buy food from the Food Hub, our local Food Hub. We've also bought from the Puget Sound Food Hub for a few years now. And as the farms that we've had long-term, long-standing relationships have sort of, they've come and gone, and sort of they're starting to retire and look at different futures for themselves. It's created a great a gap in our in the marketplace for local food. So discovering Puget Sound Food Hub a few years ago was really great for us. It really helped open us up to being able to buy food that was, even though it wasn't necessarily in our backyard, it was regional and as local as possible. So it's been really wonderful for that. I sort of, I can talk a little bit about our challenges as a producer, a little bit. As a producer, our challenges that we faced trying to accommodate selling through the Food Hub, a big one for us was, well, we started selling through the Food Hub during the pandemic. And so we were basically scrambling to try to figure out a way to get our customers the foods that they were accustomed to receiving from us and that they still desired. And so we had to very quickly pivot to figuring out how to go from a visual market through our deli case where people could come in and they could see what we were making and they could visually see the food and buy it, to an online marketplace. And so that for us produced some challenges trying to sort out packaging, labeling, as Tate mentioned, taking photos of our products that would translate, in an appealing way to the marketplace. That was sort of a little bit of a learning curve for us, and still kind of continues to be, as we kind of are wedging our work in the Food Hub into our normal everyday operations. It's been a little bit of a we've had to scramble more than once to try to get a good picture of what we're creating that week up on the site, or and to create heating instructions and figure out the best way to package it. So those things have been a little bit, those were the biggest learning curves at first. Another learning curve for us, or another challenge for us, has been lining up our work, our deliveries for the hub with our weekly schedule, and aligning the drop-off dates with our days off. That's been a little bit of an issue for us. The drop-off dates for the other islands don't necessarily coincide with our daily days of operation. So if we want to participate from week to week, we do have to come in on our days off to sort of to prepare and deliver our offerings. So that's been a little bit of a thing. And let's see, I had a little list here, but of points I wanted to make, but I lost it with the, okay, here we go. So some packaging, something else that we've learned, people really they love the prepared food. They love the prepared food items. And for us, as our demand accelerated, we found ourselves limited to what we could fit into our very limited freezer space. So while we could have produced more of our most popular items, every week we have to cap what we're able to offer due to lack of space. So that has been a little bit of a, something that's kept us from really, amping up our production and our participation more and more. And then, a question that we are definitely left with is, as conditions start to normalize in our daily operations and business is ramping up, we are questioning how will we fit production into that ramped up business? Like, is the niche that we're presently filling at the hub, it was born from extraordinary times, and we all seem to have a lot more time on our hands and space back then. So we're wondering now in the future how we'll fit it all in. So that's a little bit of a question that we're asking ourselves. Let's see. Let me try to find my Olivia. You've got me here. Okay. So I believe that the strength of our food hub in the future is going to hinge on the growth and development of our wholesale marketplace. Olivia, you keep kind of moving me out of my little area where I have my little list. So I'm just going to zip it back because I'm not a really good. Hold on just one second. Okay. So I think that our work in growing our wholesale marketplace is going to be inspiring, teaching, and figuring out how to educate, if you will, potential wholesale buyers on the skills of flexibility that I was mentioning earlier, so that we can create a rich relationship between them and our sellers. So I feel that, in phase one of launching the food hub, which we did during the pandemic in sort of extraordinary times, the questions that we asked were, how can we best serve the needs of our community during the pandemic? And in phase two, where we're seeking to grow into a sustainable long-term effort, our question is going to need to be, how can we best serve the needs of our current and potential producers and buyers? So as a buyer, to switch to the other side, and I'm probably at the end of my timing, I'm not looking, but I would say that what we're looking for from potential producers are communication and consistency. So knowing what is available now and in what quantity, and knowing what's going to come next and in what quantity, what will be available, what's coming, what's phasing out, and when, so that we can plan with our other vendors to make sure we have what we need to operate on a daily basis. So, order cycles don't always line up with different marketplaces and vendors. So you know, if we can't find what we need on the food hub, if we pop on there trying to make our order and the things that we need are not available, then we're forced to try to order from someplace else. And sometimes we miss our window and sometimes we don't. So I would say that trying to figure out how we can increase communication between the grower and the buyer, as you do in a traditional direct grower buyer relationship, will be something that is important for us to figure out how we can kind of bridge that. So that's kind of a little bit of what I have to say. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Laurie. And we'll definitely come back to you for more questions. That was, if you couldn't tell everyone, Laurie is so passionate about local food, and we're so grateful to hear from her today. Rounding out our panel, next is going to be, I believe we have Jacob from Boldly Grown Farm. And I got to tour their cut and wash facility that is also at the Puget Sound Food Hub. And from there, I will turn it over to Jacob.
Thank you, Olivia, and thank you for also putting up a slide with some pictures. It's extremely busy time for us at Boldly Grown Farm, and so I have not put together slides or anything else, but please, yeah, take a look here at a couple pictures of, there's me on the right and Amy, my wife, on the left. And if you are looking for more visuals, feel free to go take a look at our Instagram account. It has a pretty good documentation of our products, our employees, our systems, and kind of what we grow. So I apologize for not having more visual references. I'm a visual learner, and so we just didn't have time to put that together. So yeah, to give a quick background on our farm, we're heading into our 8th year of production at Boldly Grown Farm. Before starting Boldly Grown, my wife Amy and I worked at the Center for Sustainable Food Systems at UBC Farm, the University of British Columbia's organic teaching and research farm. Amy started in marketing and program management and ended up as the director of the unit. And I started as a student worker doing undergrad work there, undergrad learning there, and kind of advanced into managing the annual vegetable production, some of the marketing, and the poultry production there. So that's our background. We do have a background in, I have, the natural sciences, ag sci, and Amy in the more soft science of kind of food system management. So it's been an interest of ours for a long time. We moved to Skagit Valley 8 years ago to basically start farming. And also I work full time with, it's now called Gowan Seed Company, but at the time it started as Osborne Seed, and Osborne Seed was bought by Gowan. So I do also work in commercial ag as well as the farm. So our first year we started with 1 acre of vegetables. However, we knew from the beginning that we wanted to be a wholesale farm from the beginning. And in kind of all reality, that we actually haven't added that many crops or that much diversity to our program beyond what we grew in our first year, but we've just kind of steadily increased every year since then. And so this past year we were growing around 25 acres of vegetables wholesaling, as well as running a CSA. So we exclusively sell to wholesale markets, and then as aside from our CSA program, and that is about 20% of our business. So about 80% wholesale, 20% CSA. We don't go to farmers markets, we never have. And we don't actually sell to restaurants directly. The only grocery store that we sell to directly ourselves is the Skagit Valley Co-op, which we've been selling to since our first year as well. Also, our first year, we started selling to the Puget Sound Food Hub. So this is we're going into our 8th year as a food hub farm, and it's been an increasing amount of our sales, and we've been heavily invested in it. Amy was on the first board of directors for the Puget Sound Food Hub when it was trying to transition from an NABC project into being a farmer-owned co-op, and She served as president for 2 of the 4 years she was on the board, and now I'm entering my 2nd year on the board, and she's not on the board now. So we've been involved a long time, and we're really passionate about the Food Hub, for all the reasons why we've discussed Food Hub, why Food Hubs have come about, the direct connection with the customers for us as growers, and the reduced logistics, though, one bill, one order for the customers, resulting in supporting many different producers. So all those things that have kind of led all of us small to mid-scale growers to build these hubs for ourselves and for our community. We focus on fall and winter storage crops, fall and winter and storage crops, which is a niche that we saw in the market as an opportunity, and something that was something that we're passionate and good at growing. And so all those things led to basically kind of following that path and continuing through. Increasingly, we're selling more and more during the rest of the growing season, but I would say 80% of our sales are September through March, and the main kind of June, July, August, September even is a lesser extent. Yeah, we've focused on wholesale since the very beginning, partly in part because we just want to grow a lot of food, and we recognize that we're good at growing food and we're good at developing relationships, but the logistics or the time spent at farmers markets was not kind of how we wanted to spend our time. We wanted to spend our time growing and connecting with people that can then go on and connect with growers or with sellers. We wanted to meet the customer where the customer's at. And I think there's a stat from when we started our farm, when we were looking at market research, but something like over 93% of organic produce is purchased at grocery stores. And so, even more specific than wholesale growing, we've wanted to sell specifically to grocery stores, because that is where we feel like we have the greatest opportunity to reach customers that are both cooking and eating and interested in organic. There's a place for CSA, and there's a place for farmers markets, and there's a place for the home delivery markets, and we support people shopping wherever it makes sense. And for us, grocery seems to be the sweet spot, and we do sell to quite a few restaurants, and obviously we sold to a lot more restaurants through places like the Puget Sound Food Hub before the pandemic, and it's pretty clear that both groceries and obviously what Evan was talking about before with the hunger relief programs has increasingly become a larger part of our business over the last 2 years as well. Yeah, another reason why we were drawn towards wholesale is we've always wanted to have a larger farm, not just acreage wise, but team size. We've always wanted to have more people working on the farm than just Amy and I. And more than just Amy and I and 2 or 3 other people. We wanted it to be where we have young kids now. We now have a 5-year-old and an 18-month-old, and we're not the ones transplanting the vegetables or harvesting most of the vegetables or washing and packing most of the vegetables. And that's by design, because we knew when we started that we would have life changes as we kind of continue down the path of our family, and want to have a team surrounding us that can help us achieve our life goals, as well as our kind of size and distribution goals. And we've always wanted to also have employees that are independent and empowered to do the good work. And so it's not like and we also want the jobs that we're making on our farm to be career style jobs. So I don't have an org chart to share with you, but we over the past 2 years, we had our first farm manager who managed the farm, Madeline. She has done an amazing job. And She oversaw our growth from 12 acres up to 25 acres from 2019 to 2020, or no, sorry, 2020 to 2021. That was a big shift from, you know, having 5 employees or 6 employees total to 12 employees total. For this year, as we are expanding again, but to a lesser extent, but moving to actually a new property. That's something I'll share in just a minute. Actually, I don't know, maybe I'm running out of time. I actually am not keeping track. Anyway, we're now going to have 3 managers. Madeline is one of the 3 managers, and then a staff under that. And so again, having career style jobs that people can find a home in agriculture in the long term. So there's 3 questions that I was asked to address. The first one was investments. What investments have paid off for our business this year? And I'd say from our very first year, we've made lots and lots of investments. And that's easy to, you know, list out all the equipment and infrastructure that we've invested money into. But the most important investment is in relationships, and where those relationships are with our employees, developing our employees, and building relationships with them, which is, you know, a lot harder than maybe just writing a check and buying a new tool. Relationships with customers. I look at every box of produce that we send out, or every bag of produce that we send out, as, you know, part of the agreement, part of the kind of trust that people have giving us their money. And it's also a marketing, you know, tool. You know, if every bag of carrots is good in quality and represents the values that we have, then people are going to build trust in our brand. Relationships with our vendors, obviously with the pandemic and supply chain issues, having strong relationships there with our vendors helps us ensure our supply going forward. And of course, our partners, you know, investing in both, you know, time on the board of the Food Hub, or spending time, you know, building a relationship with our customers, you know, because we care about them, and also because having a personal relationship developed with our customers ensures, you know, they're going to think of us when things are challenging, as they have been in the last 2 years. Next question was, how has the investment in a PSA or a GAP certification paid off for you? And I'd say it's really a barrier, or not a barrier, but it's a basic need, you know, to entry into the market for wholesale. And so for us, we've been invested in food safety because we believe it's important since the beginning. And since we're doing a lot of, or most of the things, or all the things that are required in food safety certifications, just without the paperwork from the very beginning, just adding the paperwork was the natural step. And so it's kind of, if you don't need it to sell to the customers that you want to reach, then that's totally fine. But in many ways, I find that the food safety requirements that are put on us to follow to achieve the GAP certification, they're all practices that we should have anyway, and the documentation probably helps. You know, it's maybe not the most popular thing, but it's important to remember. And then I think I've talked about the advantages of selling. Yeah, the last question was, what are the advantages for our business for selling wholesale? And I think I've talked about those advantages. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Jacob. We'll definitely be coming back to talking more about some of those more wholesale focused questions.
Yeah, happy to address those later.
Yeah, great. So we're in our last 30 minutes here, so we're going to open it up. I have some questions prepared, but first we're going to touch back with Evan and Sarah specifically about food access programs and how food hubs interact with that. There was a question in the chat about specifically school districts accessing funds through food hubs. So if we could kind of touch on that, and then additionally, what tips do Evan and Sarah have for producers to access this pot of money for food assistance programs?
Yeah, and to add a little complicated layer to it, that question was specifically referencing the USDA pilot program, which has limited funding and requires GAP certification for all producers and an application process to be a vendor for it. Just a quick comment on that. In the food safety realm, there are many different audits you can get. We maintain a GAP audit, and all of the farms that participate in the USDA program have to have their annual GAP audit. So we're responsible to USDA and Washington OSPI to be part of that program. So the pilot program, which we just trialed this past year, is temporarily paused. So I can follow up with Suzanne directly to talk about Lopez's spending, but you can also follow up with OSPI if you're interested. I do believe GAP standard is going to be a barrier to getting the Salmon Island Food Hub, like accessing your produce, but yeah, we can cover that outside of this. More general comments on school districts. Right now, the WSDA, which is a separate pool of money from USDA, has a bunch of funding for schools. There's a big farm to school grant that WSDA and the Washington legislature funded. So please go to their website and take a look. They're able to buy from food hubs. They're able to buy from farms directly. Really just having from the WSDA talks, and I'm not going to like speak for them, but just having a relationship with your school district's a great first step. Having some baseline food safety, at least documentation. It's kind of varies district by district for kind of what the school nutrition programs require. And then kind of just having some good market materials on like what you grow and like who you are and like why, they're supporting local. Great resources for accessing school districts. And we're trying to engage more. We have a bunch of different little programs. Obviously the USDA pilot program is another strange beast, and USDA money is always a little bit funky too. So yeah, I don't know, Sarah, do you want to talk about some school districts, and we can jump into like more general hunger relief and food access?
Yeah, I wish that I could talk more about school districts, because I think it's incredibly important that we're, number one, offering our children top quality local produce, really nutrient dense, excellent foods. And I also, feel that connecting kids into the community of food production that's right around them is really critical. And yet there are all these regulations that in the San Juan Islands, at least, we don't have growers who have these certifications. It's an expensive process to get through. And the Ag Guild is operating some grants right now that could make it possible for a group GAP group of interested producers to get off the ground. We would love to support that for folks who do want to move more into that wholesale space, but we don't have a lot of people farming 25 acres of vegetables here. And most of our farmers have adapted to a niche where they're selling direct to customers or to restaurants, but through personal relationships. And not a lot of folks have the labor force, the housing for a labor force, and the ability to bring their costs down to the levels that are necessary to get into the institutional market. So it's work that we're really interested in supporting however we can for those growers who are interested. But at this moment, we don't have a cohort of producers really ready to step up and serve the school market or hospitals or other institutional buyers in the islands.
Great, thanks, Sarah. And I will say, with the interesting thing about GAP is that it is an annual commitment. So once you have your GAP certification, it's something that you need to continue to do every year, but that makes it a great long-term investment for accessing wholesale markets. Speaking of wholesale, we can jump to this question in the chat. Susan is wondering how buyers find the Food Hub and what publicity is employed. I can speak to this before I pass it to Sarah, but just as someone who has filled in at the aggregation site here on Orcas, a lot of it, there's definitely a dedicated customer base. And then I hear from people who are picking up their retail orders that they're always telling their friends about it, because the Food Hub has become a part of their weekly routine as well as weekly meal planning. But I'll let Sarah continue to answer that question as well.
Yeah, we are a very young organization and we do not have a marketing budget. We have put all of our money at this point. We aim to operate where we basically break even and we can cover paying for our personnel and paying for transport of goods, but all the other money goes into the producers' pockets. So we're super interested in expanding our ability to do more marketing. It's one thing that our membership universally is asking for. So that hopefully will be a project for this year. We just need to scrape together some funding and get a person going on getting the word out more directly, especially on Orcas and Lopez. I think just reaching more customers would be definitely a goal.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. So kind of speaking about new farmers, I'd like to touch back with Boldly Grown as well as Laurie. And if you could just have like a peer sharing moment here about what advice you'd give to farmers who are interested in doing wholesale, both Laurie as someone who purchases local food and Jacob as someone who sells it.
Sure. I can give, I'll basically just give the same answer that I have heard a mentor of ours give, Ray DeVries, who's the owner and operator of Ralph's Greenhouse. You know, same question, I would say, and I probably heard it as a young beginning farmer 8 or 9 years ago. And I'd say there's 3 components, and it's quality product on time at a fair price. If you can reliably deliver those 3 components, that's a really good basis for strong relationships with wholesale customers going forward. Laurie, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I figured it out. Sorry. I would definitely echo what you're saying for sure. Yes, consistency, quality, but I would add communication. And I think that the one really limiting piece at this point of the wholesale marketplace on Food Hub, figuring out a way to create channels of communication between the farmers and the buyers. Like knowing that level of uncertainty about jumping on the hub and not really knowing necessarily if you're going to find the same thing you found last week or the week after, not knowing it's going to be there. You know, if it starts to feel like a gamble, you're kind of forced to order from from some place that you know you're gonna be able to find it. So I feel like the direct buyer seller, buyer grower relationship that we have created through the years with our farmers, our farm partners, we like to consider our farmers that we work with our partners, has been that kind of relationship. You know, when we used to sit down and talk about like, what are you planting? When can we plan that we're going to be able to have it? And how long will it last? And like, basically, when do we need to switch things up? So I'd say that that piece of being able to communicate what's available and when it's not going to be anymore is important. I would also, I guess, say to someone who's wanting to break into the wholesale market in a way that they're going to be able to maintain that relationship would be to manage successive crops. So there's a steady flow of product. So I'd say maybe like you focus on just a few crops at a time that you know you can provide over a longer period of time to more people, so that there is that like piece, that reliability piece for the buyer. And that could also mean like coordinating with other, communicating and coordinating with other growers to limit too much overlap on certain products. So less growers are left with such an excess of certain crops. I mean, restaurants, I can speak for a restaurant, like a grocery marketplace has a little bit more flexibility, but with restaurants, you can embrace flexibility, but you also need to have a little bit of predictability. So, and I think that restaurants want to buy the best quality produce and meats they can, but they have to know that they're going to be able to find those things. So
yeah,
yeah,
I was gonna say, I'm really glad you brought that up, and that's I would say that's definitely like the next. Yeah, when you have those quality product, it's about, the on time piece is what I was kind of talking about, and you're right, and it's interesting. So like, to be like a little bit more transparent, like our biggest customer is not the Puget Sound Food Hub. Our biggest customer is Organically Grown Company, a larger wholesaler.
Mhm.
And obviously they've got a lot more years in the market than the Puget Sound Food Hub. And I would say part of the value add that OGC puts onto our products, or all of the products that they carry, is that they do a lot of production planning with growers like ourselves. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to buy, 300 cases of kale every month from you from June through November. And, in June, we might want 600, but we can't commit. So, plan on 300, or, there's a larger conversation that they're working on ensuring the supply, so that when their customers come to them, they've got that lined out. And that's another reason why we are drawn to wholesale, is that we'd rather focus on a narrower crop mix and have it consistently, and also rely on another organization to maintain those relationships with the customer. And so, it's something that, and I'm, as a board member on the Food Hub right now, we're working on the Puget Sound Food Hub, sorry, we're working on developing a system where the Food Hub takes on some of that management, some of that responsibility to ensure supply, and to ensure that, we're not boxing farmers out, but that we're ensuring that like there's a minimum amount of diversity that's always available, so that you aren't, as a customer, stuck without it. Or, a new customer comes on and buys everything out, 1 week, and then all of a sudden you're stuck without your kind of reoccurring order. And I think it's that this is definitely a growing pain of where the Puget Sound Food Hub is at right now. And the question is, are the relationships strictly between the buyer and the farmer, and the Food Hub is just an aggregation distribution service, or is the Food Hub taking a larger responsibility in ensuring the smoothness of that kind of relationship? And I, as a grower and as an owner and board member, am advocating for the Food Hub to take a larger responsibility, because at the end of the day, the Food Hub's name is on the sale, and the Food Hub is managing the relationships of many farms or many customers on our behalf. So.
Yes, and I'd say that, like, it is a hub, right? And the
Yeah.
idea is that I think for me in my mind, the idea would be for the producers to work together to some degree to sort of so it benefits the buyer if what they want is available, and if the growers could work together to make sure that their plantings and their crops are lining up, so that there is a consistent availability is to everyone's benefit. I think in an ideal world, it would be amazing if every food hub had a person who was that person who could be that intermediary, who could be the person who works with the growers and also works with the buyers to talk about what's happening. I don't know if maybe it could be, there could be a newsletter, or which we do with our food hub. Sarah does a beautiful job of trying to talk about like what's coming, what we can expect to see, what we're seeing, and sort of how that ebbs and flows. But yeah, I'd say that the hub is a place where hopefully all these different interests come together to,
this is where
benefit both sides.
This is where my initial point about, what was the biggest investment in the past year, or any years, and it's always in relationships, right? It's always investing in, that either that person or that kind of, I call it like intellectual infrastructure, how do we, and it's understanding, it's talking, it's events like these. And then it's also, unfortunately, there's no like coffee hour where we go hang out in the lobby and, have a Danish and talk about, what do you want to grow, next year? Or is there anything
I'm having coffee.
Or yeah, exactly. So it's, it's interesting because I have to reflect on the fact that I haven't been in person to like a farm meeting. I guess we had the Puget Sound Food Hub annual general meeting last month in person, but I would say 20% of the attendees were in person. And so it's been 2 years since I've been at a big farm gathering, and we're kind of like steady as she goes in terms of like continuing with the current relationships we've had since before the pandemic. There hasn't been a lot of new development, just a lot more of what we've been doing before. And so, yeah, I call that like intellectual infrastructure, that coordinating systems. And I've been working on it for a long time. And I think it is just those relationships and Excel spreadsheets and, everyone doing their best to make a best guess. And sometimes they work out great, and sometimes we got to circle back the next year too. So
we definitely have engaged at various levels with production planning. Jacob got back to me probably one of the faster of our producers. We still have several that have not gotten back to me after 6 months. So that's the game too, right? Like, we've got that incentive. We all know like buyers want it. We want it because we have no idea what we would sell otherwise. Like, buyer comes to us and says they want, all this consistency, and we got 2 farms, and okay, we know we can get you this much, but I bet we could get you more. So yeah, it's definitely on our mind. But yeah, the staff time and buy-in from the farmers is also that really critical component here.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like there needs to be a coffee hour in the future. I agree with Roger in the chat, as well as like food hubs themselves. I know I've talked to Evan that I think the next step is definitely some cooperation between farmers who are utilizing the food hub, as well as growing that production planning. I know, the San Juan Island Food Hub, I'm part-time, I know Sarah's part-time, and then I know Evan is slowly growing their team too. So it's such a balancing act of growing the food hub so that we can grow for the farmers as well. But next I would like to point to a question for Evan in the chat. And again, we're in our last about 10 minutes here, so feel free to continue to ask questions in the chat. But Evan, this question is for you from Cheryl. Can you talk about the fresh sheets that Puget Sound Food Hub has been developing for buyers? It worked well at Cloud Mountain, along with our fresh sheets sent out every week.
Totally, yeah. Theoretically, if you request it from our website, you are able to get like a fresh blast of like kind of what's hot on the market from the Food Hub. And it's kind of, yeah, like part of our evolution really has been going from like explicitly these fresh sheets to like more production planning models and like buyer buy-in basically. So I mean, okay, if you're an interested buyer, this is my chance for you to say, come to us and say like, this is what I want, and we'll do our best to match you with that. we have been fairly reactive with sales. So as much planning as we can do with you as buyers, that would be great, because we are that kind of middleman in many ways. Yeah, so yeah, we have a fresh sheet. We have, if you just like log in to local food marketplace, you can see our stuff. Oh, Jacob's got his hand up here.
I don't want to interrupt Evan, but I do want to throw out a kind of a comment dovetailing on what we were talking about before. I do think that the LFM website, the local food marketplace website, as a web store is a good option, and it's a great place, an easy way to get started. And it's also a very easy way to get stuck in patterns that are difficult to work with, as Laurie was talking about. And so a good deal of our sales through the Puget Sound Food Hub are actually not logged in through the store. And the web store is not like our last line of sales, but it's kind of, what do we have time for in the week, and what is, available, let's offer it on the web store. When we sell to Hagen through the Puget Sound Food Hub, their fresh sheet is separate, and in many ways they come first, because they're the steady reoccurring order that is coming, every week or 2 or 3 times a week. And so maybe there are ways to, and we know we've worked on, with customers that need access to the steady supply of the same produce every week, alternative ways to communicate and be involved. So Evan, I don't want to talk on top of you, but I think we all have a lot of love for the LFM website for organizing this whole kind of crazy show. And at the same time, that just in time, list what's available thing, it's a great place to start, but it makes it challenging when you want that steady relationship.
Yeah, I mean, like, I texted Madeline an hour ago and bought out all of your watermelon radishes. So
yeah,
that was not through LFM.
And so now they're gone, So.
Evan, another question from the chat that I'll kind of introduce, but has Puget Sound Food Hub experimented with surveys to wholesale producers and consumers about quantity and price points? I guess if you could speak to the scaling up for wholesale program, because that is the process that the San Juan Islands my role at the San Juan Islands Food Hub as wholesale development coordinator, we are just beginning to start.
Yeah, so there was a nonprofit, I believe it was grant funded for 3 years. It just finished last year with the Northwest Agriculture Business Center, and several key partners, including some farms in the membership of the Puget Sound Food Hub, to pair a set of buyers and a set of farms and talk production. So like kind of surveyed both the farmers and the producer and the customers on those kind of market relationships, and they really did like plan out pricing and supply and kind of work through that whole thing. We're trying to basically do that organically again now without any grant funding. So many of the people who participated in that are still doing it, but yeah, we don't have a current survey at the moment, though we are engaging producers kind of one at a time, talking about their production plan and what their price needs are. I see Tate's unmuting, so maybe we'll jump.
Yeah, no, that was my question. And yeah, I was just thinking that would be an easy way for, instead of having to reach out to each producer and consumer individually, and just having like something that we could share between food hubs, even like, this is the consumer form, you go in, mark out all the stuff you want, hopefully people take good enough records where they can say, in July, we went through such and such amount of each product, and this is what we're paying, this is what we're willing to pay, and like what that top bar is, and then a separate one to go to producers would be, potentially the easiest thing, rather than having to coffee talk and, which would be great, but not everybody can make it, and it gets messy.
Yeah, there's some interesting models on it. I need to pick NABC's brain more because they have the report. I'm just kind of executing on like the existing relationships. And I also know that like Max of the Bellingham Food Bank has his kind of way of like looking at a standard price and then having variability based on scale that starts off with like the co-op's price list as like a baseline, and then you kind of go from there for like local food economy and everything. So yeah, there's definitely more conversations to be had there.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think a survey and a coffee chat, you would probably identify two different groups of farmers as well. So, you know, using both ways could get us a lot of data potentially. Within our last 5 minutes here, I just want to touch on one last question within the chat, specifically to Sarah and Evan again, but just if farmers are looking to join either Food Hub, what are some of the minimum food safety certifications? And as well as, are there buyers who require additional ones?
You want to jump in there, Sarah?
I know that Evan's requirements are currently stricter than ours. We just require that you are following the laws that you're required to follow, and we ask people to work with Zoe Froyland at the county. She's the health inspector, and for value-added folks especially, she usually wants to have a meeting about what they're selling and how it's being prepared, that kind of thing. So Evan, I know that you have a lot more barriers for your producers to clear before they can sell with your hub. So I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah, so there was a really productive conversation with some regional food safety experts in our like Northwest Food Hub Network Summit last week, or well, ending yesterday, about like kind of baseline, like kind of where the wind is blowing. So our baseline standard is a PSA training for at least one staff member that's working at your farm. You also have to have a food safety plan with a recall plan. And those can come in many formats. We're not requiring certain like restrictions for that food safety plan at the moment. Though the third-party audits like GAP have a kind of shape that your food safety plan should follow, or at least it makes it easier for them to audit. So most people write it a certain way. So we are trying to lean towards that just because it makes it easier if a farm does want to get GAP certification, or just at least have a standard kind of practice. But yeah, PSA training, the food safety and recall plans, and $2 million in liability insurance. I think it's got a more specific umbrella coverage. I don't know if Jacob wants to say what it is. I don't remember off the top of my head.
It's 1 million for San Juan Food Hub.
It's a pretty, the 2 million sounds like a lot, but it's a pretty standard food distribution policy. I don't think it's more than a couple $100 a year. So I mean, there's other coverage I would highly recommend for running a business beyond what's that, but the barrier for the food hub is, or the requirement for the food hub is, I wouldn't say it's onerous for someone.
And it does seem to be like, for example, the We Feed Washington program that we're engaging with, they put it as, they wrote the word recommended in the contract, and they kind of like didn't like highlight the fact that it wasn't explicitly required. But it does seem like at least the PSA training and a food safety plan are a really great start for everybody. And the food safety expert that did all the group gaps is like, oh, that's like that's how you get like on a bar. Like there is no bar lower than that for food safety from an auditor standpoint. And so like, if you feel like that's a barrier, it's an 8-hour course. It can usually be put into 2 sections, and the course is about writing a food safety plan. So you have really like actionable steps you can take afterwards. It was a little boring. It had very like useful, productive parts, and actually NABC and Viva Farms are often engaged with it. WSDA is engaged with it. Rob, the farm manager at Viva Farms, has hosted it a number of times, or at least the farm component. So he's always a resource too. want to just reach out to Viva and chat with folks and say like, hey, like, what do you think? Like, when's the next one? All that kind of stuff. There's folks around. The whole region's really engaged with it, and there may or may not be funding. I attended a free session. I want to say like 5 months ago, so I have it under my belt, and you know, if I join your farm, then you qualify. So this is the time for you to recruit me too.
Yeah, there's often grant money available to support growers going through PSA trainings, and I think we paid about $25 for me to do the much fuller HSPCA training through a Washington State University grant. And like, there's definitely, the money shouldn't be a barrier to getting the trainings, but there are those, you know, annual, like if you do go to the level of GAP and that kind of thing, then there is an annual commitment to pay for auditors' time, and that came up yesterday at the Food Hub Summit, where they were mentioning that often these groups get started under a grant, and so nobody has to really buy in eventually. But then when the grant money runs out, sometimes the groups just fall apart because people don't want to keep ponying up the money to do it themselves year over year. And I could see that happening here for sure.
Yeah, for GAP too, and I think we're about to run out of time, but sometimes it's just the Food Hub that's required to get GAP for a buyer to be satisfied, as long as we can also identify some baseline safety standards that we are also practicing. So anyway, that there's not as many bars and barriers as you might perceive.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just put in the chat some resources for some upcoming trainings, because the San Juan Islands Food Hub has a USDA grant that we are paying. If you take the PSA training, we'll reimburse everybody. And if you do it in person, and there's one coming up in Anacortes, we'll pay for your ferry as well. We just need a copy of the certification. And I'd really like to thank all of our speakers today. It was really interesting and great comments. This session was recorded. Yeah, thank you. Woohoo. And